My 36F husband, 52 male, asked me to flash some roadworkers. I did, and then he got mad and pushed me out of the car next to them. How do we move on from this? Been together 10 years, married for 6. The last 2 or 3 years he's started to show less and less interest in me. He does subscribe to a couple of OnlyFans accounts, which I'm not bothered about as it's no different to porn, so I know he still has sexual urges. I've tried talking to him a couple of times about this and told him I'm getting bored and frustrated, and he knows I'm willing to try anything sexual, so if there's anything he wants to do to get him motivated, I'll try it. He just says duly noted and carries on with his day, which is frustrating. A few nights ago we had friends round for tea and we got onto the subject of commutes and roadworks, with them saying how their commute has more than doubled due to a road they use having roadworks. Carol, the wife of the couple, then says we've found a way to make it more entertaining though, haven't we? To her husband, and they both started laughing. She then tells us that the roadworks are about 3 miles long with the groups of workers spread out to maybe 7 or 8 groups, and they are normally going 10 to 15 miles per hour, so when they get near one of the groups he beeps and she flashes them and they all cheer. I couldn't believe it as they seem so straight-laced. That night when they left, my husband was saying how brave it is of them and that we should do it the next morning. I asked if he's sure. This is a man who didn't like when I posted a bikini pic on Facebook, and he said yes, and we even had sex that night for the first time in months, and he initiated for the first time in years. The next morning we were both of work, and as soon as he woke up he mentioned me flashing. I asked if he's sure and it wasn't just horny talk, and what if the men don't want to be flashed. He said he's sure and all men want to be flashed. We drive to the road and we see a group of workmen, and my husband gets all giddy and says, "Are you ready?" I say yes, and he says now. And beeps his horn, and I lift my top up and they all cheer. We are going about 10 miles per hour when suddenly he slams his brakes on and tells me to get out. I was in shock. His face is red with anger and he's shouting, "Get out, you slag." I start crying and he's leaning over me, opening my car door, and then takes off my seatbelt and starts pushing me out. The cars behind are beeping as he stopped traffic, and he's yelling at the top of his voice. By now the workers have heard the commotion and 2 of them are rushing over to help. I turn to look at them, and I do. He pushes me really hard and the top half of my body falls out the car, and I put my hands down. One of the workers is screaming at my husband and starts trying to open his door. The other worker is by me and quickly drags me out the car. He told me afterwards he saw my husband put the car in gear and thought he was going to drive off with me hanging out the car. My husband just left me. I was still only wearing a vest top and pajama shorts and my slippers, as he'd wanted to rush out and do this. My phone was in his car and I didn't have any house keys. One of the workers took his jacket off and wrapped me up in that. They took me to a cabin that was their canteen and put the heater on and made me a cup of tea. I was so embarrassed. This lot had seen my boobs and then seen me getting abused and then fell out of a car and then rescued me all in the space of 30 seconds. I kept apologizing to them and said it was his idea, but they said it's okay and it happens a few times a day and they're used to it, but I think they were just trying to make me feel better. They were laughing and joking with me and were all so sweet and funny. They asked if I wanted to ring anyone, but I don't know anyone's number apart from work, and I didn't want them picking me up wearing next to nothing from a building site. I asked if I could just ring a taxi, but they said I can't get in a taxi dressed how I am. The man, I'm assuming was their team leader, told one of them to drive me wherever I wanted to go, so I asked if I could go to my mom's about 5 miles away. They gave me some spare work boots to walk across the mud to the van, and 2 of them drove me to my mom's, and they were really sweet and making sure I was okay and even walked me to the front door. When my mom answered, I was hysterical and crying, and they told her me and my husband had an argument and he left me by the side of the road. My mom offered them a drink and I tired to give them their coat and boots back, but they said it's okay. I told my mom we were driving to McDonald's and got in an argument. I didn't tell her about the pushing or anything. She drove me home and let me in with a spare key she has. I packed some things and went back to my mom's. My husband had been home as my phone was on the table. In the 5 days since, he's been ringing me non-stop saying he's sorry and he don't know what came over him. He said he heard someone shout "nice pair" and it made him angry. My friends are saying leave, his are obviously telling me to give him another chance. I'm 50-50, but if I do stay I'm going to insist on couples counseling for us both and sex therapy either for him or both of us. He says he doesn't want to involve other people in the relationship. It feels silly to throw it all away over a few seconds of madness, and I should have just said no when he asked me to flash, as I know he's quite insecure. I was blinded by finally getting some sex and attention from him and thought I could get more. I took the workers their jacket and boots back and also made them 2 cakes and bought them 1,000 bags of Yorkshire tea as a thank you. TLDR, husband wanted me to flash, I did. He then physically pushed me out of the car but says he's sorry. I took people's advice on this sub and a couple of others and rang the police to report the attack. I spoke to the workers beforehand who said they'd back me up. They arrested my husband and then released him on bail, but told him he couldn't stay at my house, so he's gone to his mom's. After the argument he told all our friends that I had cheated. I hadn't wanted to admit to people that I had flashed, but I felt like the tide was really turning against me and a lot of people were believing his lies, so I wrote a long message with a description of exactly what happened, plus pictures of my injuries including scrapes and bruises, plus screenshots of messages he sent admitting he asked me to flash and admitting he hit me, although he did blame me, saying if I just got out like he asked he wouldn't have had to do that. A few people apologized, most didn't, but I don't care anymore. I'm back home and he has to answer bail in a couple of months. The police don't sound confident they can get a conviction, but maybe that's how they are supposed to sound. I've spoke a little bit to a lawyer, but I can't really afford anything at the minute in that way. Been a sad few weeks, but an eye-opener, and I don't feel any guilt for getting the police involved or telling people what happened. Just working and keeping myself busy at the moment. TLDR, I informed the police about the assault and he had to leave my house.